After you've picked out a few venues you're interested in on Bustld, you'll want to tour them before making any decisions. This is going to be good.
I think so. I love talking about venue tours, actually.
Yeah.
Venue, like, I feel like touring a venue is like, you're like so stressed out because you just like, everyone's asking you when you're going to get married.
Can I have
beef? And it's like, oh my gosh, everyone, you know, and then after you sign your venue contract, I just feel like you just feel like, okay,
we got something.
We did it. We have a venue. We have a date. Yeah. If nothing else happens, we have a place to get married.
They made me feel special.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It just like, you get so excited afterwards. I don't know. It's my favorite part, I think, of like planning, like just watching them like find their venue and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I remember when we were doing ours, like I remember being overwhelmed by how many we went on. And if I asked you like how many, and you know, you would probably say like 4. And in my head, it was 40.
We really did only look at 4.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I just literally made that number up.
4, maybe 5.
I'm not making it up. Somebody else made it up, but
I think like 4 or 5 is what we actually looked at.
4 or 5.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So if only someone had vetted those for us and matched us to the right ones for us.
Whoa.
Da-da-da-da.
Bustld.
Those sound effects have got to get better, guys.
They could use a little work.
They could use a little bit of work.
All right.
But no, I agree. Once you have that locked down, like you there's a calmness. You're like, okay, we're moving along.
Like seriously, you could do nothing else and still get married. Like, yeah, it wouldn't be the prettiest. You wouldn't have any photos of it, but
or guests. You just be in a giant empty room by yourself.
But you would be married.
That's true, and that's all that matters.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true. So.
Why wouldn't you have any guests?
Well, you said if we didn't do any other planning, presumably we didn't send out any invites. No one even knew it was happening.
Well, you could just like tell them.
Sure.
Pigeon carrier and all.
Pigeon carrier.
I guess you'd have to do something.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like unless somebody toured with you and knew the date and was like, I better turn up.
Like probably your parents. Your parents will know. So
right.
It won't just be the 2 of you.
That's true.
All right. You'd have like 6 of you.
So yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's
all
not
right.
bad.
All right.
It's not terrible.
No.
How many venues should you visit? Go.
Apparently not 4 or 5. No, actually, I do agree with that. I think 5 is way too many. I think 2 or 3.
It doesn't sound like many, though.
It really doesn't.
It's like 5. Sure, of course I'm going to review 5 different things.
Right. It's like when you go to try on your wedding dress and you're like, I'm going to do, 3 different shops today. And then by the second shop, you're like, I am literally dead. It's the same thing. I don't know why. It's just like so much and it's like overwhelming. I had this one couple and we went and looked at 7 in a day.
Oh my. Wow.
I couldn't, I slept for like a whole day afterwards, I think. Like I was so tired.
I'm trying to remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Was it a couple years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say 2 to 3. 2 to 3 venues. You do not want to be overwhelmed. Like do your research before or like go on to Bustld.com and for free match to people and then you'll know which ones you should see. Shameless plug. But no, do your research. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Don't go see, go and see 2, maybe 3, and then reevaluate. If you're still not in love with anything, like why?
Right.
And then go from there.
That's good advice. I was going to ask that. What if you go to 3? Like I've definitely reviewed 3 different whatevers before and been like, this isn't what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So then figure out why. Is it budget?
Doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, in your market. Maybe you need to think about destination. Maybe it's budget. So, okay, maybe can we reduce our guest count and then spend a little more on venue to get what we want?
Right.
So I think, or do we just didn't know what we wanted? Did we look at all rural and we really wanted city weddings? Go back and listen to the last episode. But yeah, I think start with 2 or 3 and then stop and reevaluate. I think that's like true of looking at houses and stuff too. I mean,
Yes, that is the best analogy. Exactly.
Kind of similar, right?
It just gets overwhelming.
I remember like when we were looking for 2 houses ago for a house and we looked at all these places.
God bless Connie.
And then we were like, no, we're out. We're not going to buy a place anymore. And then like maybe like a couple weeks later, we went and looked at something.
Yeah.
Now we just, if you're looking for a great realtor in Charlotte, my mom, Kathy Miller, is amazing. And she takes good care of us now.
She does. She does.
She won't let us look at that many places at once.
No, it's too
the same
much.
kind of thing. Yeah. So anyways.
So can you see, do you have to see more than one?
I think so.
You do?
I think so. I think you should see two.
At least two.
You should see
to have a
two
comparison.
or three. Yeah, I think you need a comparison.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, silly analogy, but looking at preschools.
Yeah.
The first one we went to, I'm like, this is it. We don't need to see any more. And then we go and see a couple more. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's my least favorite now.
Yeah. You don't know. Even if you've been to a lot of weddings, it's totally different when you're looking at it from your own perspective.
Right.
So I think you should see two and compare.
Cool.
No matter what.
Do I have to tour if I'm very sure?
Yes. No, you don't have to.
I guess you don't have to do anything.
You don't have to do anything. You don't have to see two venues either. But I would suggest it. I mean, like I said, it is so different when you're looking at it from your own wedding. You can go to your friend's wedding and be like, oh yeah, this place was awesome. Let's just book there. But how many people did they have? Were they doing a buffet or a seated dinner? Like their exact wedding isn't going to probably be your exact wedding. What colors? Was it the exact same date, the exact same season? Like it just changes things a little bit. So I think it's good to like go in and like look at it from a fresh perspective, because being a guest at a wedding when you're not engaged is totally different than being a guest at a wedding when you are engaged,
right?
Or being at your own wedding.
And I'll throw a different perspective. I think it's good to see how the person giving you the tour and the staff and how they communicate, how they interact with you. Are like, just like when you're picking any of your vendors, you guys are going to be spending a lot of time together, and you need to make sure this is going to work. If someone's, super laid back and, not urgent or anything like that, and you're super type A and ready to go, that might not be a good fit.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Thank
and your
you.
friend might
I was
be.
due.
You were.
Yeah.
Your friend who got married there might be super laid back and they meshed great, but then you come in and you're like, whew, this is not working for me. They're just not moving fast enough. Like, whatever it is. But yeah, I agree. The people you're gonna be working with, it's good to know.
Right.
In advance. Yeah. Good one.
Thanks. When should you tour?
Now?
Yesterday?
Yesterday. As soon as possible. Once you can't do anything else with planning until you tour venues, because you need your venue.
You need the date.
To have a date. So as soon as possible, plus things go quickly. So if you have a specific date in mind or a specific season, then make sure that you get on that as soon as, quickly.
Yeah. Not to freak anyone out, but the venue is urgent, because typically they only have one wedding a day. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of other people getting married.
Yeah. When you start, when you start emailing venues, they're going to be like, well, you have these like 4 Saturdays available, and then you start freaking out.
Right.
So sooner the better.
Yep.
Especially if you're like looking on like a short timetable or something like that. Or if you have a very specific date in mind.
Like in October.
Yeah. Yeah. In October.
I'm giving you anxiety just talking
just
about
thinking
it.
about
it's
it.
just a
hypothetical.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I needed help on that one.
I could tell. You were just going to let it like kind of
I was just going to say, no. Help me. What? So before you go to the tour, okay?
Yeah,
So we're getting ready for the tour.
You booked it.
We booked it. We're
2
ready to go.
or 3.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We're very excited. How do I get prepared? What should you? So sorry. So right, that's the kind of the gist of it. But what should you know before touring? What information do I need to already have ready, armed with, to give my tour guide or venue coordinator?
Tour guide?
A tour guide.
Like on the left.
I don't.
Oh, wrong left.
Right.
There you go. It's more like a flight attendant.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, so you need to know approximately how many guests you're going to have. So you need to have put together a very rough estimate of guest count.
So between 30 and 180.
Not that rough. I would say like literally you need to have written down like, okay, we have, 50 people on my side of the family, 50 people on your side of the family. Here's a rough estimate of our guests. We're looking at around 150 to 200. You need to have a rough estimate of where that guest list is going to end up. You should have a ballpark number for your budget, because you don't want to find out later that your budget is, $10,000 and you just spent $10,000 on a venue and you have no money left for anything else.
Right. Or that you booked a venue that only accepts up to like 80 guests and now you have 120.
Exactly. Yeah. And now what?
Now
Because
what?
you're not getting that money back because you invited too many guests.
Right. About 40 awkward conversations.
Yeah, very awkward. And then general time frame. So I think an idea of like season or specific dates you're looking at, I would ask those kinds of questions in those initial inquiries. Or when you're doing your research, make sure how many guests do they have. And just a good little tip. The number of guests a space can hold is very different for a wedding than it is for like a corporate conference event or something like that, because you have your DJ, you have a dance floor. So you have different things to think about that take up square footage in your space.
Right.
If you're planning to have a band versus a DJ that's taking up more square footage, or you're adding a photo booth or champagne wall, different things like that, it's going to change. So if your venue tells you, oh yeah, for a seated reception, we can do 150, but you're planning to have a band and a photo booth and a champagne wall and, all these extras, make sure you talk about that to make sure that it's truly 150 and that's not eating into your guest seating area.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Oh, I already jumped ahead on a couple of these. I'm sorry. Whoops. Whoopsie. So I think you already answered this one too, but do I have to have a budget before setting up the tour? The answer is yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You don't have to
You should have a budget before you go car shopping too.
Exactly. Before you go house shopping, before
Right.
you do, any of those things, anything that involves spending money, you should have an idea
Right.
of how much you can spend.
Right.
It doesn't have to be exact, but you need to have a general idea of like who's contributing to the budget, how much approximately they're contributing to the budget, how much approximately you're contributing to the budget, so that you don't spend 50, 75%, 100% on just the venue rental.
Right.
You don't want to book a venue and not have money left for anything else. Like, it's not.
Have you seen it happen?
I've seen people come to me that have spent way too much money on their venue. And it's really hard because it's like you're going to probably go over budget now. There's really not a way around it unless you're going to,
Really
not
cut
have
back.
flowers or.
Have you seen people do that? They take a hard line. We're not spending over the budget and we're just going to have a bare bones wedding.
Yeah. But if they spent that much on their venue, are still going to probably still spend over that budget.
Yeah, that's
Even
true.
with bare bones. Yeah. So just be cognizant of how much you're spending before you get too far into that contract.
Yeah. All right. So when you're at the tour, what sort of things should you be asking?
Come prepared. Write all your questions down, but take like a few key questions. You don't need a list of 100 questions that you found online that you don't know why you care about the answer.
Right. Ask meaningful questions.
Ask questions that actually matter to you. So ask about that max capacity. If you couldn't find that online or you didn't ask about it in the initial email, ask them about the max capacity and ask them about the extra things you're talking about. Like, I'm expecting 150 guests with a band on a stage and a big dance floor. Is that possible in this space? Let me see a floor plan of how that looks. So ask about those kind of questions. Of course, you need to know the dates that are available. A good thing to ask is like, what does the layout typically look like in here? That doesn't mean it has to look like that, but what does it typically look like? And of that layout, what's included? Like, what's included in my rental? How many hours do I get? How many hours of those hours to set up and breakdown included? So a lot of times, people will be like, you get an 8-hour rental, and people are like, oh my gosh, that's so great. Like, I'm going to have
That's
8
so much
hours.
time.
It's so much time. But what you're not thinking about is you need at least 2 hours for setup and 1 hour for breakdown, which is 5 hours, which if you're having your ceremony on site is actually, cutting it a little close on the time.
Yeah.
So those are things to look for.
There's no break.
Yeah. No. 5 hours is going to be a short reception with a ceremony.
Yeah.
So definitely talk about that. And then what kind of policies and restrictions do they have? So do you have to use their in-house catering or choose off their catering list? If you have to use a specific caterer.
I think that's an important kind of thing that people don't think about, is that, especially the catering piece.
Yeah.
Because if you don't like someone's food and you've already signed a contract with the venue, that's too bad.
Yeah, you're locked in.
You're locked in.
And you should get some initial pricing from the caterer too.
Yeah.
The venue may be able to provide you with that. But if they can't, I would reach out to them to make sure that again, you don't want to spend all your money without even having anything else yet. So I would figure that out. And then like, what other vendor restrictions do they have? Do you have to choose people off of their list? You know, if you're already working with someone or you have your mind on somebody, like how does that affect that relationship?
Yeah. And then there's other, like you said, there's restrictions. Like there's, you know, venues that we've talked to that don't allow, you know, taps or different things like that to come inside. Like there are going to be restrictions. So you want to make sure you understand those fully. If you haven't, as you're starting to plan, you don't want to pay somebody and then find out later that, oh wait, I can't use you, but I still need to pay you. It's under contract.
Exactly. And sound restrictions. That's a big one. So like, especially if your ceremony or reception is going to be outside, what are your sound restrictions outside? Like a lot of times you're not allowed amplified music,
right? Or
your music has to be off by a certain time.
Or you shouldn't play Nickelback.
At all.
I mean venues.
Is that a restriction or is that just good advice?
It might be just good advice, but it also could just be, a specific, you know, band that they don't want played.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah. I mean, sure. But I mean, I had a wedding that was outside and the band kept increasing their sound and the venue, you know, we kept talking to them and they kept saying, oh yeah, we'll turn it down. And then, you know, 5 minutes later, I turned around and they were turning the sound back up. And the venue was like, you know, I don't want to, but if they keep doing this, I'm going to have to like shut the event, you know, a venue down early. So like know those restrictions and talk to your vendors early and make sure they're comfortable with those restrictions and they're not going to go against your will. Right.
And these rules are in place for a reason and not because people are mean or whatever it is, or they don't want what's best for you. They do. If you get into the wedding business, you do it because you really love your couples.
You do.
So yeah, you want to understand those, but keep in mind that there are reasons for them.
There's a reason. Yeah.
So so those are some great questions to be thinking about, meaningful questions for you, not just a list of 100. What should you be looking for as you're walking around?
It's like hard to describe, but you want to feel like, you want to feel this feeling of like almost excitement.
Yeah.
You want to walk in and be like, this is it. Yeah. Like you want to see yourself walking down the aisle or, you know, dancing on the dance floor or what, you know, taking your ideal picture in this rose garden or whatever it is.
Right.
You want to feel like this is going to be the place that I'm going to remember. I mean, this is such a big day. So like, it's like, it needs to have that feeling. Like you want to walk in and be excited and leave feeling excited. Because if you feel that feeling, you're going to know like, yep, that's the one. This is where it's meant to be.
Yeah.
And then you'll feel good about it.
Nice. I love it. I mean, it's true though. It's almost instinctual.
It is. It's like an energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you wrap up the tour. How do you leave it?
So I would always suggest asking, you know, what are next steps if we decide to move forward?
Do the tour guys not ask that?
Sometimes.
Interesting.
I would always ask, like, you know, if we choose to move forward, what do we do? What does the deposit look like? What's the contract look like? What's that process look like? And then I always recommend asking if they do any kind of courtesy hold or if they do any kind of temporary hold. A lot of venues, if you're really interested, might hold, you know, a date for you for anywhere from 24 hours to a week. Typically it's like a courtesy hold where if someone else wants to book, they give you like first right of refusal.
Right.
But that gives you some time to see a comparison venue, you know, go home, talk with each other and any family that's contributing or anyone else who has an opinion on this that you're interested in. It gives you a little bit of time before you have to put money in and sign an official contract.
So explain the courtesy hold a little further. So like, how does that work?
If a venue offers it, you know, usually they'll take your name down. A courtesy hold, typically there's no cash involved.
Right.
And I mean, there's one venue here in Charlotte that will do it for us. And this happened to me many a times where they'll call me and they'll say, hey, I have another couple who is really interested in that date. They want to book. You know, your couple has, you know, an hour, 2 hours or whatever to kind of make that decision.
So it happens more often than it doesn't.
It does with venues.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, especially during prime time. So I would say like if you go, you love it and they have, you know, an October Saturday available that works for you, say like, can I put a courtesy hold? Can I go home? Can I talk to my family or whoever?
Right.
And get back to you. I just want to make sure everything's going to work out. Don't do it if you're not interested because that's
Yeah,
silly.
and you're potentially hurting somebody else
Yeah.
or even the venue.
Yeah, so don't do that. But, it's definitely worth asking, like, I'm really interested. And then if you decide not to go with that venue, let them know. Let them know, hey, I'm not going with you, but, please release the hold and blah, blah, blah. But
Right.
yeah, let them know from there.
Perfect. So then as far as like next steps, when it comes to venue tours, what should our couples be thinking about?
Of course, this kind of goes back to those 3 big things. You got to think about your guest list, your budget, and your date, right? And then pick your top 2 or 3 tours. Schedule your tours. Make sure you have good questions to come with, and then book one.